An expansion to Dungeons & Dragons is finally here. That's what anyone who has seen this book is saying, and I love it because this is not just some small handful of rules to fill in some gaps of the core rulebook. And here it is, Alkandar's Almanac of all things. This is a full expansion of the 3 pillars of Dungeons & Dragons: combat, social encounters, and exploration. And even more than that, because there's mass combat, inspiration, death, resurrection, and a whole bunch more. And the best thing is, it's all completely modular and custom fit for you, because that's just it. The core rules of the game are great, but they're designed for the masses, not you and your table specifically. This expansion not only gives you rules across all aspects of the game, but also gives you options for each of those rules, sometimes multiple rules for each section for you to pick and choose from and tweak and change them, giving you examples of how to do it for yourself. A quick run through of just some of the things in this expansion is a Session 0 checklist with character creation tables to help you start off your campaigns, fall damage, potion systems, new attunement rules, new help actions, a full chapter on overhauling inspiration, skill challenges, multiple different kinds of skill challenges, chase scenes, full social encounter systems with disposition and reputation when PCs interact with an NPC or a group of NPCs, an entire roleplay section to help you and your players be able to roleplay better and increase the parts of the game for that, an adversity system to handle addiction and mental health issues for characters, new ways to level up and customize characters, exploration pillar of rest, travel, and downtime, new ways to handle gold, encumbrance system, and supplies, and of course, a full-blown system of combat on the offense, defense, everything. The defense side of armor, shields, bonus action, reaction stuff to be able to play more defensively if you want to spend your action economy that way, or on the offense side, a full overhaul of weapons to where each weapon feels different than the next. New martial actions for you to also use so you can really take the action economy of what you're capable of for those martials and actually go crazy with it. And of course, new spell systems to overcharge spells and push your body to the limits, and spell duels to be able to cancel each other's spells with your own spells. Death rules to make the game more scary, and then resurrection rules whenever you kill your players so you can bring them back. Or not. And if that's not enough, a full mass combat system on top of all that that's actually simple and not overly complicated to get across the grand scale of battle. So now we're going to talk about what this D&D expansion is, what's in each of these chapters, and how you can get your hands on it yourself. So what this is, I've spent the last few years of my life dedicated to making this one homebrew resource that's design and goal is to be the single best homebrew resource to be able to take and customize your games the way you want. I truly believe in my heart and soul that this resource can and will help every single person improve some aspect of their game. So thank you to everyone who made this possible, from my patrons over to the backers on Kickstarter that brought this book into existence. Y'all blew the Kickstarter out of the water, and this book has over doubled in size to far over 200 pages now. And speaking of all these pages, let's do a quick overview of each chapter and what's inside. But a quick disclaimer is the intent of this book is I do not want you to use every single rule in your game, because there are hundreds of rules in this book, and this is not designed to be here's how you should play the game. This is designed to be you know how you play your game currently. Here are a ton of different options, hundreds of options to choose from to pick and choose to use in your game to make the best version possible. So if you like how initiative is ran in your game, or how resurrection works, or even combat in general, if you like those things, leave them the way they are and pick some other things of the aspects of the game that you feel like are lacking. But maybe glance at those other sections and see if there's any nuggets in there you can steal for yourself. Chapter 0 is really simple, and I wanted to purposely put a chapter 0 in there because I love session 0. I think it's a very core part of the game. So there's a bunch of recommendations on how to use this book to upgrade your games in the different ways, kind of like we were just talking about, and a full-blown session 0 checklist and guide on how to run session 0s for your game. And I also included my custom PC creation tables that are one of the favorite things and something that I use in any Dungeons & Dragons game I've ever played, about being able to help other players, whether you're the player or you're doing it to help your other players, create very unique PCs with great personalities and different little quirks. The most exciting thing about this chapter is I want to feel like I'm right there next to you in your campaigns when you're going through this book about things to do for session 0, creating characters. I can't wait to hear all the cool stories and the cool characters y'all create together starting your adventures. Chapter 1 now are the general rules that don't fit in one of the pillars of the game and expand across the whole game. Things like jumping, holding your character's breath, falling damage. An example for falling damage, I have 4 different ways you can calculate falling damage along with different tweaks you can make and examples for which one's the most grueling and which one's the easiest. That's a perfect example of what I'm talking about here in this book, is if you like falling damage, leave falling damage. Don't even worry about that. But if you want to dial it up a notch or so and make it a little bit more scary, I provide you multiple options to be able to pick and choose from. There's a bunch of different rules on potions, and I'm not just talking about potions as a bonus action. Yes, everyone knows about that one, but taking those and really finding the right value of what you want for your potions, of how much action economy per potion you want, and a full-blown leveled potion healing system to be able to make that whole process easier. Because right now you probably don't remember what a major healing potion heals for. We got different rules for help actions, different ways to level up your characters, customize your characters, and attunement for magic items. Like I said, a bunch of broad categories that fit across the whole aspect of the game. And then we get into chapter 2, inspiration. This is one of the chapters you guys unlocked on Kickstarter, and man, oh man, is this thing fully fleshed out now and a full-blown inspiration system. I am giving you from scratch my homebrew inspiration system of exactly how I run it at my table, but that's not just it. I'm not trying to provide you, here's how my way to do it. That's not about my way, it's about your way. So what I've done is I have an entire system that you can pick and choose from to build your own inspiration system, and you can choose the big 3 things. How do you earn the inspiration in the first place? How many of them can you have whenever you do have it? And then what can you do with it? Along with examples and reasons so you can really get a big picture of what you're looking for here. Chapter 3 has a soft place in my heart because man, oh man, I love skill challenges. And there's a whole section at the beginning talking about how to set DCs. That Dungeon Coach DC? Okay, sorry. But skill challenges, the main focus of this chapter is skill challenges. I have multiple different types of skill challenges besides the generic normal skill challenge, which are awesome, but there's also 1-round skill challenges, more fast-paced skill challenges, and a brand new chase scene system. You want to run a cinematic chase scene? I got you covered, whether your PCs are the one chasing or being chased. And now chapters 4, 5, and 6 get you into the actual pillars of the game. Chapter 4 is social encounters. This chapter breaks down social interactions at the table and in the game. At the table, as in there's an entire section in here about role play and how to help you and your players role play better and other systems to increase role play across all aspects of the game. Then when you're talking about the game, social encounters with players and players interacting with each other, or social encounters with players and other NPCs interacting, with a full-blown reputation system and disposition system so that they can grow relationships with one NPC or a group of NPCs. But there's a section in this chapter that's really important to me. If you don't already know, Brennan Lee Mulligan is my favorite dungeon master, but it's more than that. I worked with Brennan and a person from his team named Joe on an adversity system. If you're familiar with some of the work that Brennan does on his show Dimension 20, in season 2 of The Unsleeping City, he had an addiction system where characters are struggling with addiction. In the case of these characters, it was alcohol or drugs, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to take this, separate it from addiction, and just turn it into an adversity system. I know we all want to escape from reality, but sometimes you want to be able to show the struggle of a character through an actual dice system, and this adversity system has a struggle of some kind that the character is going with, an adversity. And within the system, they get to grow and expand and go on that journey with their character. A lot of love went into this system, and it was an honor to work with both Brennan and Joe. Now we're into chapter 5, the pillar of exploration. This chapter is honestly the biggest chapter in the book because there is so much that I feel like is left out of the core base game. And when I first started dungeon mastering, I was like, okay, I understand the rules, but how do I get from point A to B and make it actually fun? So to list off a couple of things here, there's some general rules at the beginning that have to do with just exploration in general, like inventory tracking, ammunition tracking, rations. And if that sounds all lame and boring, then don't track it. But I do have a bunch of really cool systems that involve some dice to be able to spice it up a little bit. And I also talk about this in chapter 0, but sometimes there's rules that you don't use across the entire campaign, but for a specific spot of the campaign. Maybe they're going through a desert section and you do want to actually track food rations. Can they make it from point A to B in this travel of the desert with keeping all of their food? There's an entire food ration supply dice system for that. And then once they get to that town, you don't have to use the rule anymore. Or if you like it and you want to run a more gritty game, use it the whole time. That's the whole point. It's up to you. And there's also entire equipment systems, encumbrance systems, and a wealth system to be able to handle and deal with gold. Because if you're tired of gold and it just becomes bland in your games, this wealth system, it's pretty awesome. And a cool behind the scenes note is I worked on this wealth system with Jazza from the YouTube channel Jazza and his friend Dave. They're both on the YouTube channel Tabletop Time that does a bunch of stuff having to do with tabletops and miniatures and stuff. But it was really fun to work with them on this system and take the inspiration from something that they made and turn it into Dungeons and Dragons together. And then the rest of this chapter, if there already wasn't enough, is broken into 3 main parts: rest, travel, and downtime. There's a full overhaul of the rest system, which is one of my personal favorite rules of the entire book, honestly. Then there's travel, of so many different ways of travel. I think there's 5 different ways or more of travel in this book. They can offer, here's how to run travel. And you can take, I like this part from this system and this part from that one, and this is how I want to run travel. Or I can run travel a certain way if I want it to be dangerous, or another way if I don't want it to be dangerous. Or you can do what I did and try each of the 5 methods on your party and use them as guinea pigs. Get their feedback on which one's their favorite and then lock in that one. Then of course there's downtime, and I don't think that there's enough emphasis on downtime in the game in general, or there's not enough resources also for downtime in general. So there's full downtime systems with complications, setbacks, and all that kind of stuff. And also, I almost forgot, random roll tables of it being able to run off random encounters and weave that into your exploration pillar as well. Now, chapter 6, which is a lot of you guys I'm sure are waiting for, is combat. I want to say that this one's a game changer, but honestly, every single thing that I've talked about is a game changer for that section of your game. But for combat, I'm going to list that off here because there's just so many things here. Initiative. There's an entire systems for initiative, but not just 3 different initiative systems, but also possible rules you can use to shift and make it more dynamic around the initiative. There's an entire section on action economy and different ways you can run off different things your players want to do to give them more freedom to do cool stuff. There's also 10 new conditions put in the game and updates and overhauls to other conditions: bloodied conditions, impaired, overwhelmed, doomed, staggered. The updated conditions are things like a new petrification system, exhaustion methods, multiple exhaustion methods to actually maybe use exhaustion, because most people don't use it because it's too punishing. I don't want to get I've already done a video on that. Updates to the prone condition and how opportunity attacks work. And since we're talking about combat on a defensive note here, there's different things for mental saves, different things for damage resistance, new types of resistances in general, new simple armor systems like glancing blows, and a new challenge mode armor system, which I've done a video on, but this is now taking that and taking it to the next level through the Alkenner's Almanac polish of a new system and adding in even more feedback that's been play tested through the entire community now after thousands of people would love that video, and we have done further play testing on it to have an even better challenge mode armor system. Heavy armor really feels like it reduces the damage from attacks you take, and light armor really makes you feel more nimble to even dodge the attack in the first place. And now on an offensive note, we have an entire section of martial features. Martial classes, if you feel like it's boring to just go and attack twice and that's all you can do, this martial system might be your favorite thing that you've ever seen from me. It takes every single weapon and gives every single weapon a difference between using an axe compared to using a sword and all of that. There's also different moves and actions you can perform with them. New things you can do as bonus actions, reactions, being able to spin them offensively or defensively, new techniques to be able to use against your opponents. It really takes the martial stuff to the next level. And don't worry, spellcasters, I have an entire section on spellcasting, overcharging spells, pushing your body past its limits to cast even more magic. Spell duels between other spellcasters to be able to counter other people's spells with your own spells colliding in air. And then if all this wasn't enough, chapter 7 is mass combat. This was the last stretch goal that was unlocked on the Kickstarter, and I'm so glad it happened because this might be the best thing that I've ever created to date. I always had an idea what mass combat could be. I created a system and play tested myself for years, and then once I brought it on my team, the place that we took it to is unheard of. It's mass combat that's not complicated and you have to understand and read all of these pages for. It feels a lot like combat, but you're just in a mass combat. Your character is leading a unit into battle against an enemy that's doing the same, along your allies that are doing the same, using your powers in new and unique ways. Full systems for spell casting, siege units, all this kind of stuff. That's all very, very simple. So if there's a moment in your campaign where you really feel like a mass combat would be cool, you can use it once and your players aren't going to have to do a whole bunch of research beforehand. Or if you want to do it multiple times across a whole section, I have an advanced section in the mass combat chapter to be able to train troops and build them out and make them actually a full-blown campaign thing. And now chapter 8, the final chapter, is Death and Resurrection. I thought this was a fitting chapter to put at the end of the book because a death and a resurrection of a character spans all pillars. It's a huge part of the game. When a character's life hangs in the balance, death saves and how threatening they are play a huge part in that. And I think death saves has a lot of issues rules as written, and you have a lot of gaming around it where you can just heal and they stand back up and they go down, you heal them for 1 hit point, they stand back. That's nope, that's not going to fly at my table. But how should it look at your table? It's not about my table, it's about yours. So there are 7 or more different death saving mechanics that you can use and try and level up slowly, incrementally, which each of them get harder and harder as you get to the point where this is a really deadly game. Or you just make it a little bit more difficult to the point where they respect the death save and they treat it a little better. And then if a character does die, a resurrection system of how resurrection magic can work to make it easier and more unique and cool, or make it harder and more rare. And a fully systemized resurrection system that I got a whole bunch of inspiration from the man himself, Matthew Mercer, whenever I saw how he ran resurrection and how it made it into actual moments where a character has died. Can they come back? It's not an automatic, I cast a spell slot, they come back. Does it work? I've added extra levers and knobs onto this thing so you can truly dial in how hard it is for a character to come back. So there it is. And if that sounds crazy of the amount of content in this expansion, I truly think it is absolutely crazy. This is the most amount of value that I've ever packed into one single resource. My goal and intent was to create the single most valuable resource that anyone that plays Dungeons and Dragons could get and use. And because they had Alcanar's Almanac and they read through it and found that spot of the game that just felt off, or didn't even know a section of the game could be better than what they were currently playing at because them and their group really like that style. That's the goal, and I feel like that I 100% did that. Blood, sweat, and literal tears from myself and others poured into this thing to make this possible. Thanks to y'all making this possible is why it's even a thing in the first place. And I'll also say this, no matter what expansion comes in the future, this rule system also for any other tabletop role-playing games. It is just a homebrew guide to inject your games with whatever you're playing. So how do you get your hands on Alcanar's Almanac of all things? Well, if you back the Kickstarter, you already have it because a year ago you decided to believe in this vision of mine, and I appreciate you for that. But right now, and it's crazy to even be saying this, but Alcanar's Almanac of all things is available on the website, down linked in the description. And if you want to get your literal hands on an actual hardcover book of Alcanar's Almanac, then you have until the end of July. At the end of July is when the door closes on this thing. I'm only doing one print order of Alcanar's Almanac as a hardcover. Then after that point, it will only exist as a digital PDF. So if you want the digital PDF version, go to my website. And if you want the hardcover book, go to the pre-order link below that. And if you like all the stuff I do here and you want to make sure you're up to date on the next thing that I do, because it's already in the works now, follow me on Kickstarter, go to the actual Kickstarter page, look for the Dungeon Coach and click follow. You'll be alerted right away when anything's coming out because the new stuff's going to be coming. And go to my website, sign up for the newsletter. I don't send out a bunch of stuff unless big things are coming. I send out coupons and discounts for everybody subscribed there as well. So in general, there's a lot of stuff happening on this channel right now over the summer, and we have a lot more to come. A little sneak peek, especially since you stayed to the end of the video, is the next Kickstarter is going to be about crafting and gold economy. Gold in general in Dungeons and Dragons has always been something that people, how much do I price? Gold shops. How do I do this? How do I, it's just a nasty, weird thing that's inconsistent across other people's games. I have an entire system for that, paired with a crafting system of making items from scratch, whether it be potions or magic items or regular items or whatever else you want to concoct. So if you haven't figured it out by now, the goal and message of what I want to do here is help you guys to stay creative and think outside the box. Peace.